What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So I think we are probably, this is maybe, I don't know, part 4 I think of my Del Sol turbo build. Yeah, so almost done. Got the new manifold in the mail last night. Slapped the manifold on. Let me show you that. And yeah, now I can kind of finish up for the most part and just wait on a fuel pump. Let me show you how this manifold looks though. So this is what we're working with now. Ditched the cast manifold for this one. This one, being to my eBay surprise, actually comes supported. So it's got a little brace right here. It's got this brace on the back side. Looks to be probably like 12 gauge steel. Oh, 2 braces on the back side. So hopefully that'll prevent any of these welds from cracking. Difficult thing to do was get that nut on because you had to like hang the manifold way down all funky. But you know, it does clear the dipstick pretty good. Much better than the other one did. That's a plus, maybe. There we go. But yeah, so now that I got the turbo, this is actually how the turbo is going to be sitting. I did try and flip the turbo around that way. A few of you guys suggested maybe trying that. Only issue with that, really, because I could have flipped the flange around, that would have almost came perfectly in line with that, so I could have ran that almost straight across. But the downpipe, this was sitting right into the side of the radiator, and can't really put the radiator anywhere else, so I'm just gonna have to run it as is. But I do have clearance now to run the air filter, so gonna have to take a chop saw or something to that and modify the intake flange a little bit. So I'm gonna have to modify this a little bit because it does come out at an angle like that, and it'll be pretty much facing the radiator, so I won't really be able to fit too much of a filter on there. So I might just chop this right before the bend and then just weld on a little straight section and bring it back, you know, right across here and put the filter somewhere around here. But I don't know, I'll work on that as I'm going today. And now I can start fabbing up the downpipe. That's also gonna be tricky because I do need to basically just get a 180 and then wind it back there. I can cut the fuel line now and I can get my length for that and put that on. And this also makes it a little bit better for the oil feed line, although this bracket may be in the way. I may need to cut that off and re-weld it a few inches over, like an inch over. Maybe I'll have to run the line really quick and see how that looks. But so far, we are looking pretty gravy. Actually looking now, I can't even put the feed line on yet because I have to get a fitting for the turbo. But that's okay. And then water lines, and still waiting on the fuel pump. Fuel pump should be in tomorrow. Got my vacuum lines plumbed up, minus the wastegate one, which I just have to run that straight across, and that'll be good. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this charge pipe hooked up again, so that way I can kind of see where I'm sitting there. And then maybe try and do something with the downpipe and oil line. All right, so to do this radiator, I am gonna have to modify a little bit because I don't think it's gonna be clear in the blow-off valve. Yeah, I didn't think so. It's like just in the way. Yeah, so it's just barely in the way. So I'm gonna just go ahead and scoot the radiator over a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is, you can see that it's just making contact right there. It's in the factory mounting location right now. That's why it's kind of planted. And that is just barely in the way. So what I'm gonna have to do is just literally just scoot this radiator over like a 1/4 inch to make room for that. So I'm pretty much just, yeah, should be able to just get away with trimming the tabs up a little bit, and that might just work. So after messing with this thing for a minute here, if I just lean it to the left a little bit, then I can get enough clearance for a vacuum line on that blow-off valve, or on the wastegate. So that's what I'm gonna go ahead and do. So I'm gonna go ahead and just lean it over a little bit. And I have to modify this radiator mount anyway because it sits too high. So I'm gonna just cut it in half, clean it up really quick, and then just basically mount it so it holds the radiator cocked to the left just a hair, just enough to fit the vacuum line on there. And then I will just run it like that, because when I change the turbo setup, the radiator is gonna fit in the stock orientation, and it kind of sucked to cut it off and re-weld it over a little bit and trim up right here, and then just to change it in a few months to back to stock location. So I'm gonna go ahead and just trim this mount, re-weld it, and clock it, or yeah, clock it. So giving it just like a slight overlap like that to not only actually grab the radiator, but by leaning it and then just turning it a little bit, I can get it to stay propped up right there. So I'm gonna go set up the welder and just get this tacked up. So here it is. Not super pretty because I'm out of black spray paint, but you know, it's 2 seconds worth of work later on when I feel like spending 98 cents. But yeah, it's solid, it's not going anywhere. It gives me just enough space for a vacuum line, so that is all I need. And like I said, as for this, I'm thinking I'm gonna trim this, and yeah, because I can't really fit a filter there. I got a slim fan, my slim fans came in, so putting a slim fan on here. But yeah, this piece here, I'm gonna have to try and cut it and weld it straight forward and see how that turns out, and then I can just fit a filter right here. So with the radiator mounted now, I'm gonna go ahead and trim up the drain line. Cannot think of what it's called. So it's already all plumbed up, ready to go. The fittings are all mounted. I just need to pretty much just mark the hose, cut it, and then like tighten the clamp down how those fittings are, and then it's done. Put a little bit of gold heat wrap on the top of the radiator to help kind of direct some of the heat away from it. I'm gonna put some along the side, most likely 2, and then since the downpipe's right here, I plan to wrap the downpipe. I have had a wrap, but I am gonna put some of the heat reflective tape on the charge pipe that is exposed right here, because you know, it's better to have cooler, denser air. But let me show you really quick what I'm doing here. So this is the oil drain line, the 90 fitting necessary. This fitting, basically this is just a kind of a compression fitting. So this just goes on here like that, and sorry, backwards. No, I had it right, yeah. So they just get threaded together like this. So super simple. Actually backwards, but yeah. So it just sits on the hose like that, and this goes inside the hose and then threads in. So I'm trying to show you guys here what I'm doing. So I got the one fitting on here, and I got the other end of the fitting on the turbo, so now I'm just trying to mock up the length. It's really hard to do since this line is so thick. But yeah, this line, it's nylon tubing inside, I believe, and spray steel outside, so I'm gonna just use a cutoff wheel or hacksaw to cut it. But yeah, just get my length right here, so I think I should be able to trim it roughly there, and then y'all mark that quick and cut it. That should be good, and then that'll give me the proper angle I need, and then drain line will be done. So I gotta cut the length. Now shove it up into the fitting without poking yourself, because these are metal wires. More or less like that. I'm gonna go ahead and thread this in like that, and then just crank it down. I don't even know what size I'm using. Monkey wrench and 1 1/16. So go ahead and snug it down. So just like that, we got ourselves the shortened line. Now I'm gonna go slap this on the car, pretty much like that, and we should be good. With the oil line, the drain line all hooked up, I'm gonna go ahead and slap on the sandwich plate again for the second time now, and then just route the feed line. So I can't install it yet, like I said a few minutes ago, because I don't have the actual fitting for the turbo, but I can at least get it mounted, routed. Well, it looks like we're not doing the oil feed again today because the line just broke. So I'll have to just replace it. It's cheap enough. It's just another stumbling stone, but it'll get done. So back to the shed for the sandwich plate. Coming back to you now, this is probably 2 days after that last clip. So I went ahead
and I was actually able to modify my intake flange because before it was going right into the fan, so I basically chopped it. And if you guys remember me saying in one of the last videos, I'm teaching myself how to TIG weld at work. We finally got the TIG welder working again, my coworker and I, so I am teaching myself on aluminum, and so far so good. This one came out a lot better than some of the welds on my charge piping and intercooler piping. So yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. I just got that tightened up. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to take all this off because I don't know if you can see it in there, but I got that oil feed fitting made. That's a 60 thousandths restrictor, I believe. I had that custom made at a AGP Turbos out here in Tempe, Arizona. So really cool guys, very helpful. I told him the engine setup and the turbo setup, and he recommended that. This is a journal turbo, or whatever, journal bearing, whatever it's called. So it needed a restrictor because the factory lines that this turbo comes on with the SR20s, they run restrictors in the banjo fittings. Obviously I'm not running factory lines, I'm running -4 lines. So he said a 60 thousandths should be the best bet. So had one made. I'm gonna have to take the whole turbo off the car to friggin' tighten that down, but it's in there, so I know it fits. Threads are good. I need the oil line made yet, but right now I'm gonna be making the downpipe. So I taught myself also how to make pie cuts. Never made pie cuts before, but these are roughly 5 degrees on each side. So I cut myself a bunch of pieces, had some extra skunk pipe around with a little skunk badge on here, and even has a banjo, or not a banjo, a bung for an O2 sensor, so that's good. So I'm gonna go ahead and use some of these and start tacking together a downpipe. A few of you guys have already mentioned, why don't I just buy an eBay Turbo, a little ching chong boy, or whatever you guys call it. You know, I'm not really against eBay Turbos. I personally just kind of find them annoying that every automotive YouTuber is doing an eBay Turbo build or whatever, and they're getting a bunch of views, and yeah, I'm a little jealous because I don't get as many views as them. So I got this stuff for free. A vast majority of this setup is for free, and then the rest of it I'm making myself. So I'm just trying to show you guys that you can make it work. Like, it doesn't have to be a full kit, and most of the time when you buy an eBay kit, it's not going to come with everything you need. You're going to have to modify stuff, or you're going to have to get stuff modified for you. So that's what I'm doing, is I'm just showing you guys, like, you can go to the junkyard, pull a turbo off of a Subaru or a Evo or a Mitsubishi or a Nissan or something. You can use it. You just got to make it work. And that's what I'm doing. I'm not in it for the power. Like, yeah, it'll be fun having 250, 300 horsepower in a Del Sol daily driver. But I'm just making it work. So I'm gonna make more work, and I'm gonna make this downpipe. So if you guys don't already know what pie cuts are, it's literally these pieces of straight tubing cut roughly into, you know, a piece of pie. And with pie cuts, sometimes a mandrel bent, which is where it's like pre-bent piping and stuff, it's not necessarily always as tight of a bend, and you don't have as much maneuverability in terms of like rotating it. I mean, you can always cut it and re-weld it, but it's you know, it's sometimes just not always practical. So that's where pie cuts come in, because you basically just start attaching them like this. I already went ahead and cleaned these up pretty good. I cut them on a chop saw, so they're not the cleanest cuts in general. So you just basically just go ahead and attach them like that, and yeah, I'm gonna be doing that. So I have Vbands. I have it on my toolbox, but I'm gonna be using a Vband quick disconnect basically. And yeah, so I'm gonna find a good solid piece right here, so probably this one, and go ahead and weld this to my flange, so that way I can get that started. I am MIG welding it, so it is gonna be a bit of work. Obviously a TIG weld would be a lot more effort, but I don't have a TIG welder here at home, and being that it's just mild steel, it's not titanium or stainless or anything like that, there's really no sense in me waiting to go to work and TIG it all up, and I can just MIG it with this thing and it'll be just fine. And it's gonna get wrapped in header wrap anyway, so I'm not concerned too much with how it looks, but I think it'll come out just fine. So because this was a learning experience for me, and I did not have completely the best measurements, I'm gonna take one of my larger pieces here to weld onto the flange, just like that, more or less. Actually, this one might just be it. And yeah, that way I have a starting point, and then I can just kind of start, you know, welding the rest of it on from there. So yeah, that's a nice snug fit in there, so I think I'm gonna start with this piece. Just give it a few tacks, you know, so it doesn't warp and doesn't move on me, and call it good. got a little bit of an angle coming right off, so now I can start really just piling on, probably just like that. We'll just start tacking them on, and then after I have my full shape and everything, you know, made, then I can go ahead and weld it all the way around. So it's going to be a lot of welding, but should come out pretty nice. So this is what I'm working with so far. Obviously the Vband flange, and I got these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pieces already. So here is a pretty much perfect 90. So that means I got those cuts pretty darn good without even hardly measuring them. Yeah, so it's almost dark out. So I'm gonna have to probably cut the camera off here and just keep working by myself with the light on and see where I get by tomorrow.
So I got the downpipe made up last night, and I'm gonna say right off the bat that I'm really stoked on it. It is not 100% perfect, but it should flow pretty darn smooth. I got all the joints, all the pie cuts lined up really good, and I just did it piece by piece. It took almost 3.5 hours, so I was out here for a good while. I did go to the gas station while I was there getting gas. Obviously, I called around to see if any of the hydraulic hose stores were open on weekends, and literally, apparently none of them are open weekends. So I'm SOL, I can't get my feed line made or my water line, so I may just try and order some ones off of eBay because it's the same stuff. It's like nylon tubing wrapped in braided steel. It's just that the local ones would have been, you know, a little bit easier, probably a little bit more expensive, but now it's a waiting game nonetheless now anyway, so I may as well just order them online, get them cheaper. So as for the water lines, I don't know. I'll probably still have to go get those made, but that's a different day. I'm gonna pop this off quick because it's all welded up. I just got a little section to fill in from my flex pipe to the back of the back section of the exhaust. Can't really see it. So I gotta fill that section in, but I do have to get everything welded up. So it's all tacked, obviously. I just need to go through and weld all of it, and hopefully I got enough gas. So I should have enough, so hopefully. This is what I came up with. So flex pipe, obviously, so it can have some flex in it. I know this section looks a little wonky, but just the way I had this, because this pre-bent section I already had, I just trimmed it and used more pie cuts to kind of like crisscross them to make it more of a straight section with a very slight angle. And then right here was a little bit more difficult. So if I had pre-bent sections already instead of just a dozen or so, or a couple dozen pie cuts, probably would have looked a little bit cleaner and gave me a lot less welding to do, but it'll work nonetheless. Yeah, I'm stoked. I'm gonna just go ahead and get this welded up and then get this video wrapped up, because that's all I can do at this point since I'm waiting for my lines now. Fuel pump won't be here for a few more days, and I had to order another Vband flange so that way I could attach the O2 section, because I have to use this to fill in that gap to the back section. So just waiting on the last little teeny parts, and then this is all done and ready to fire up. So here is the downpipe all finished up. Some of the welds, well, I mean, all the welds are pretty decent. I mean, I had one little spot right here where the friggin' wind was blowing, really messed it up, and once air gets trapped under there, then it's really hard to actually like bring it back down. But other than that, all of them just came out fine. I was doing 2-inch beads all the way around, just kind of, you know, made it simple. So nothing super pretty, but again, this is getting heat wrapped. If I wanted to make it pretty, I would have tigged it, and that would have given me some good practice anyway. But yeah, this is exactly how it's gonna be. Right now, really all I can do for the rest of the time until I get the rest of my parts in the mail and until I can get to the hose store when they open up next week is, yeah, just get this bolted up. I'll trim up the next section that I need the V-band for, but you guys don't need to see that. It's literally just a straight section of maybe like 10 inches, and then that's it. I mean, the exhaust is done, really. I could run this just as is if I wanted to, other than putting a little wideband flange on here. So I'm gonna end this video here, so hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to stick around for the next video, hopefully where we finish this up and maybe fire it up. But anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.